The conversation around the campfire continued until someone mentioned that they'd wanted to become a surgeon, but just could not handle the blood. Adrian piped up with the story that when something like how back when he was in the army, he'd ended up with the blood of one of his colleagues on his hands. Literally. No, not because he had killed someone, but because in a training accident, one of his colleagues had been injured. Almost in reflex, we turned to the stranger, waiting to see if he would have a story to match Adrian's. "Do you mind if I smoke?" the stranger asked. And you just knew that he was talking about marijuana. We all looked at Adrian. He did not show much concern, so with an unhurried motion, the stranger reached into his pouch and pulled out a small leather pouch. From the small pouch, the stranger pulled 2 short metal pipes and a wooden bowl, and a little baggie of marijuana. He joined the 2 pipes, attached the bowl, filled it with marijuana, took a stick from the fire, lit the marijuana, put the pipe to his mouth, and inhaled. After he exhaled, he smiled and asked, "Would you agree, Adrian, that in a way you are bonded in blood with your mate?" Without waiting for a reply, he said, "I have a blood bond with a barista. The blood from my hands is shared with her. Is that what you have with your mate?" Now, Adrian was just about to jump out of his seat, and before he could reply, somebody said, "Barista? Must be coffee time." The tension was broken, and we all got up and stretched and made coffee. At this point, 2 or 3 of us drifted off to bed, but when the rest of us had settled again, Adrian spoke. "Did I tell you the one about how I saved the life of one of my toolmate colleagues?" When we all shook our heads, Adrian proceeded, "I did a tour to the top of Barramundi Falls in Kakadu National Park. The Barramundi Falls are about 25 metres high, but they don't have a huge volume of water going over them. When we got there, I noticed that one of my mates had had a tour to the bottom of the falls. He and his group were swimming in the pool at the bottom of the falls. We waved hello to each other and shouted greetings. Then, after about half an hour, I heard a yell from below, 'Help!' I looked below and saw my mate was being bitten by a crocodile. Without thinking, I grabbed my boots and, taking a running leap, I jumped off the cliff, throwing the boots at the crocodile, before landing with a thunderous impact into the water, close to the crocodile and my mate. Startled or shocked by the impact, the crocodile released his bite on my mate, and with the aid of the tour group, I was able to get him out of the water and away from the crocodile." All of us looked on incredulously, and then Adrian burst into laughter and said, "Nah, it wasn't really life-threatening. Freshwater crocodiles don't kill people, they only nip them. It's the much bigger, immensely powerful saltwater crocodiles that are life-threatening." When the laughter died down, the stranger put down his pipe and said rather laconically, "I saved the life of a woman today." There was something about the matter-of-factness of his statement that immediately caused all of us around the campfire to turn to him and listen. Someone said, "Was it the German woman?" The stranger said, "Well, I did not know it at the time, but yes." "How did you find her? How did you save her? Where was she?" came the questions. The stranger paused, reached into his pouch, replenished his pipe, and when he had it lit again, proceeded. "I was camping down on the floodplain below the plateau, enjoying nature, dodging crocodiles, and staying out of the heat of the day. I'd been down there a couple of days when I noticed an increase in helicopter flights, and even some fixed-wing airplanes. I couldn't figure out what all the fuss was about, but figured I wasn't really in a position to find out anyway, so I shrugged it off as one of those mysteries of life." Now, transfixed as we were, we could not help but notice at this point that there was a slight change in the stranger's tone. Sheepishly he continued, last night, as I made my dinner, I was feeling a bit lightheaded, perhaps from dehydration. So I made sure that I had plenty of water to drink before I headed off to my swag. The stranger paused, in hard from his pipe, and then with a shake of his head and a slight smile, and proceeded. Earlier this morning I woke, before dawn, with a full and complaining bladder. I stumbled out of my swag. Now normally I'd reach for my torch, but because it was almost dawn, I didn't bother. I walked a short distance away from my camp, found a spot, unzipped, and with a sigh let out a stream of urine. I had not really been looking where I was urinating, but as my eyes adjusted and my ears did not recognise the sound of urine hitting soil, I looked down to see that I was relieving myself on a person, a woman. Startled awake, the woman tried to flinch away, but I could see that she was exhausted and unable to move. As she slowly came to her senses, I tried to stop my urine flow, but failed, so directed it away from her. I knelt down to see if I could help her and to see if she was injured. I couldn't see any obvious wounds. When I asked if she was okay, well, I could see that she wasn't. She mumbled something in a language that I couldn't understand. Sensing my confusion, she motioned. Of course, drink, water! How silly was I? Motioning with my hand, I motioned for her to wait. I ran back to my camp, retrieved a cup and some water, and ran back to her. Kneeling down, I cradled her head and raised the cup of water to her mouth. Motioning with my fingers, I indicated, sip, just a little drink. She sipped, swallowed, smiled, sipped, and swallowed some more. I stayed with her for a while until she was able to hold the cup and to drink from it herself. Now, when I camp, I always include an EPIRB, a satellite phone, and a shortwave radio in my equipment. When she was well enough to drink for herself, I ran back to the camp and set off the EPIRB. EPIRB is an acronym for Emergency Positioning Something or Other Beacon. Within minutes, one of the helicopters I had seen buzzing back and forth the previous day was hovering overhead, and then lowering a medic down to the ground to assist the woman. It seems that they'd been looking for this woman for the last couple of days, so had been prepared for this sort of discovery. Anyway, soon my camp was overrun with police and volunteers, and a bigger helicopter had flown out to collect the woman and to take her away. And there was nothing left for me to do but to come back here and to collect my stuff and to go on. Fortunately, one of the chopper pilots took pity on me and offered to give me a ride, which I gladly accepted. Suddenly, the stranger stood, took a final inhalation from his pipe, up-ended it, tapped out the contents into the fire, placed the pipe into the pouch before slinging it over his shoulder, picked up his stool, and slowly turning to address us all said, I thank you for your company and for your stories. It is time for me to hit my swag. I would hope that you would not think illy-whack of me, and would be pleased if you would remember me as Tex. Good night. With that, Tex turned around and walked off into the shadows. I sat there intrigued. Illy-whack. Now that's an interesting turn of phrase. I had first come across it way back in 1985, when Australian writer Peter Carey released a novel titled Illy-whacker. In the preface to the book, Illy-whacker was defined as an Australian colloquial term meaning a storyteller, a fabricator, an untruth teller, a fiction man. Was Tex suggesting that these stories were true? I never did find out, and that is the story of how I met Tex.